Matt Flegenheimer, whoever wrote this story. This is a 3,400 word story. I used to be a print journalist. When you write 3,400 words about someone and you're allegedly at the New York Times, there's a level of research that you do. And who's been critical and what are the allegations? And you ask Stephen A. Smith about them, or you do your own research. You just don't reprint the lies. This story, and Matt Fleginger in the New York Times, I apologize, but it reads like ChatGPT wrote it, that AI wrote this story, that Mark Shapiro and Ari Emanuel and Endeavor and WME said, hey, we need the New York Times to write a story promoting Stephen A. Smith. We've had ChatGPT write the gist of it. Can we put someone's name on this? I'm going to give you my big smoking gun here about the avoidance of truth and just how protected Stephen A. Smith is and what a plant and how he's no different than Joe Biden. He's been installed. It's not just left-wing media. The New York Times isn't the only group avoiding the truth as it relates to Stephen A. Smith. I don't trust any of the media, and this is why I'm not popular with any of the media, whether it's left-wing or right-wing, or whether it's so-called independent journalists. That's all a smokescreen and a lie. Because conservative, alleged, independent media, they've been selling the lie of Stephen A. Smith as well. And you want to know why? Because they all have the same representation, the same agency. They're all connected in some way or another to Endeavor, Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro. They're all connected to the same tribe. They all answer to. They all get their guests from. And there's a reason why, like people, hey, you got to avoid Whitlock. He's actually independent. We can't control that Negro. Avoid him. Not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I'm really not. But I'm just telling you the truth. And so here's this story written allegedly by Matt Flegenheimer or Matt ChatGPT. I want you to look at their headline. Stephen A. Smith is running to be Joe Rogan. The entire gist of the story is Stephen A. Smith wants to be Joe Rogan. He doesn't want to be president. He wants to be Joe Rogan. And they go into some detail. Stephen A. is quoted talking about Joe Rogan and all this. And at no point in this 3,400 word story in the New York Times, allegedly a beacon of journalistic integrity, they never mention that Joe Rogan absolutely trashed Stephen A. Smith. That the only real connection between Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith is 5 years ago, ESPN tried to foist Stephen A. Smith onto UFC coverage and had him call a fight between Cowboy Cerrone and Conor McGregor. And they did it with, I think Michael Eaves was the host, and Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith. And Stephen A. Smith called Cowboy Cerrone a quitter. And Stephen A. Smith said we didn't learn anything about Conor McGregor. And Joe Rogan trashed Stephen A. Smith. And the whole thing went viral. It's the biggest connection between Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith. And any reporter that did an ounce of research would have contacted Joe Rogan and or just mentioned in the article, like, man, this guy wants to be Joe Rogan, and maybe he's motivated by his hatred of Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan trashed Stephen A. Smith. Let me refresh your memory if you have forgotten. I want to play SOT number 10. This is Joe Rogan talking about Stephen A. Smith. Play the clip.
So I looked at your Instagram yesterday, and you had that video of Stephen A. Smith, and immediately I was like, "Oh my goodness, this explains so much." Play this, play this, Jamie. Watch this. First of all, someone needs to explain to me what's happening here.
Yeah, well, it looks like a dick punch to the left.
I don't even think it's dick, unless that guy's got a 2-foot dick. Look how low he's punching.
No idea, man.
This guy should not be allowed to talk about fighting.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna cut. My concern with him though was that, like, look, he's fine. He just did the video. I get it. Like, it's good that you're trying to learn the sport, but I gotta tell you, like, DC sent me this video and he basically commented on it, and I said, D's trying to protect it. DC's trying to protect him. I said, you cannot protect this guy, not from this.
No.
You can't call someone like Cowboy Cerrone or any other top guy in any organization. Yes. I don't care if it's UFC, Bellator, One, any of them. All these organizations, you cannot do that to these guys. These guys lay it on the line every time. We're not slapping a puck or hitting a baseball, okay? Yes. We're really out there getting hurt. Yes. And when someone calls you a quitter like that, you better be. I'm not saying he should be careful, like watch his back, but don't expect these fighters to be very courteous to you next time you walk in the hall. And that's the issue that I think we come across here with top fighters. Are very offensive when they get offended when things like this.
Rightly so. Yeah, it's a different thing. There's the emotional cost of losing a fight is so much different than losing a game. It's not the same. And there's a culture in sports broadcasting, whether it's radio or television, this just diminishing of people. There's this shit talking that goes with sports. You know, he always falls apart. That guy, that mother needs to give his money back. He sucks. He this and that. And the other guy's like, oh, I can't believe you're saying that. And you could do that in sports radio, and people love it. Because if you're on the job site and you're listening to the radio and you're hammering nails, you're like, you're right, he does suck. And there's a mentality that goes along with that kind of sports radio, sports guy talk. I hate that shit. I've resisted that from the beginning, and I've shit on those guys from the beginning because it's not the same thing. You're not talking about the same thing. You're talking about fighting. You're talking about unbelievable physical consequences, including, knock on wood in our sport, it's very rare, but death.
Yeah.
So, a high school journalist, if they're going to make some comparison, hey, Stephen A. Smith wants to be Joe Rogan. First thing they would do would be like, hey, the only real interaction, only thing interesting that's ever happened between Joe Rogan and Stephen A. Smith is that. Stephen A. went on a UFC podcast, Joe Rogan took a dump on him, and Stephen A. hasn't been involved with UFC and fighting ever since. Not mentioned. This is the selling, the protection of Stephen A. Smith. His legitimate critics are not given a voice, whether it be me, whether it be Joe Rogan, whether it be things that happen in reality. Because that happened in reality. Not mentioned. But we're going to do a 3,400-word article saying he wants to be Joe Rogan and comparing him to Joe Rogan. But we're not going to mention that Joe Rogan trashed him and basically ran him out of UFC fight coverage. This guy doesn't want to be Joe Rogan. He wants to be Joe Biden, and that's how the media is treating Stephen A. Smith, like he's Joe Biden. There's a protection racket, a hit because he's a puppet willing to be put on puppet strings, and so there's a level of protection that goes along with that. Help us grow the Fearless Army. Pound that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all your fearless friends.